What a pleasure it is for me to be here and share this great conference with all of you. I know people have asked me a lot of questions. What do the past presidents of Rotary International really do? I say, well, we're kind of like a corpse at a funeral. We're absolutely essential for the occasion, and we don't have a very big part to play in the program. And we sure as heck don't want you to hear you speak. So, you know, I remember my first yesterday I had lunch with past district governors. You know, Rotarians come and go, but past district governors just accumulate. And I saw all these district governors, and I remember my first contact with a Rotary district governor. I was a new Rotarian. I belonged to the Rotary Club up in Berkeley, and I decided to go to my first district conference. It was held up in one of the big hotels in Sacramento, and it was just the time the hotel had taken the paper towels out of the restroom and put those big hot air machines in there. Sure enough, I went over there, washed my hand, went over the machine, and somebody had scotch taped a little card right over the machine, and it said, "Push the button and hear a short message from our district governor." Now, Governor Rudy, I have great respect for you, and I haven't been in these restrooms here. I went last week. In any event, you know, Johnny said I grew up in Ohio. As a matter of fact, a little town that I grew up in, I used to go to Rotary every week. I had the best attendance because at the Rotary Club, they paid me to come to Rotary. I was a waiter. And I used to go to this Rotary Club every Monday noon. And so when I became the world president of Rotary, I went back and made up at that little Rotary Club, even to assure them that even the waiter and the busboy can be elected president of Rotary International. It was kind of a small club. Well, as a matter of fact, it was so small, they only had a three-way test in that club. They had those questions. Is it fun? Will it hurt anybody? Will anyone find out? That's all you had to know. They kept the three-way test in that club. You know, I come from Moraga. Now, you may not know where Moraga is. Moraga is a little kind of a bedroom town on the east side of San Francisco Bay. Moraga is just a small town. It's kind of a bedroom for San Francisco Bay Area. It's, well, Spanish, you may interpret it, I think freely translated, Moraga means large mortgage. It's, now we have a Rotary Club there in Moraga. We have a breakfast club that meets at noon. It's I wouldn't say that all of our members are old. I'm delighted to see so many young people here. You know, in our club, it's not really old, but our lunches are catered by Meals on Wheels. I don't know why they always think Rotarians have to be so old. I remember one of the members was telling me the other day, he says, my wife says, let's go upstairs and make love. He says, can't do both. You know. Apparently some of you guys recognize that. Another guy in my club was bragging a couple of weeks ago, around the table, says, I remember that night, I made love for 1 hour and 3 minutes. Someone says, when was that? Says the night they turned the clocks back, you know. maybe you get a little idea of the kind of club that we belong to. You know, when you get old and, you know, you get retired, you eat out a lot. When my wife used to say, it's time for dinner, I just went out and got in the car. And one of my neighbors, they ate out so much, was the only reason they had a kitchen, it came with the house. He put vending machines in his kitchen just so he'd have regular meals. Well, I got some notes here. I better follow and see what I'm doing. You know, when you get old enough, your memory kind of goes. And I had a couple friends who were out to dinner here a short time ago, and one of the guys says, "Hey, what's happened? Your memory's so much better." The other guy said, "Well, I'll confess, I'm going to a memory school." He says, "A memory school? How does that work?" He said, "Well, everything's related. You think of one thing, that helps him remember something else." He says, "That's pretty interesting. What's the name of your memory school?" He says, "The school is called what are those long red things you give your wife on Valentine's Day?" He says, "A rose?" "Yeah, that's it." "Rose, what's the name of that memory school?" When you get along like this, they elect you president of Rotary International. Well, I better get along here. I was on the street the other day and some guy stopped me and he says, "Hey, I heard your last speech." I said, "Well, I'm not sure it was my last one." He said, "It should have been." I remember one night my wife and I were out at a Rotary Club meeting, and driving home I said, well, how did I do tonight?" She said, "Well, you did pretty well, but you missed several good opportunities to sit down." And I have the feeling I've missed a couple of them already here tonight. Let me talk a little bit about this fabulous idea that Governor, what's his name? Rudy. So soon forgotten. Rudy brought this idea of heroes. And this room is filled with heroes here tonight. You know, a few weeks ago, I happened to be watching the Jeopardy TV show. When you live in a senior center, you look at everything that happens before 8 o'clock. In any event, this particular day, they were having the Teenage Challenge, and there were all these bright young teenage youngsters. And they could answer all of these curious and unconventional categories that one could imagine. And the thing that intrigued me the most was how quickly they could whip out the names of so-called rock stars or movie starlets or people who are musicians, and they could name them all and identify them. And I kept wondering, are these the teenage heroes of today, or are they just celebrities that young people know? I think there's really a difference between real heroes and those who have never just been considered celebrities. Many of you have seen an article that's been occasionally circulating on the internet that says, ask if you could recall maybe last year's Cy Young Award winner, or maybe could you name the best actress on the Emmy Awards last year? Perhaps who was last year's Heisman Trophy winner or Times Man of the Year? Most of us could never recall that. But at the same time, what if you ask, give me the name of your favorite teacher who touched your life? Remember your high school football coach, or your scout leader, or the choir director, or the music director. Some special mentor that touched your life as you grew up. You see, there's really such a huge difference between real heroes and those who are just made up by the media, who are celebrities. Celebrities are often just the manifestation of a personality and ego, and many celebrities have the figments of just a public relations hype. But heroes that touch your life day after day with real compassion and humanitarian caring, those are real heroes. Tonight I'd just like to mention a few Rotary heroes that I've known over the years. These are heroes that touch the hearts and minds of many of their people just because of their caring acts and thoughtful deeds. Heroic acts happen in every walk of life. We can all be heroes to someone. I remember one day as president of Rotary International, I was sitting in the president's office and I received a letter from a fellow by the name of Ernst Rag, who happened to be a district governor in the Rotary district in Austria and several of the other nations surrounding. Ernst Rag described the plight of 3 million refugees who are fleeing from Bosnia and Croatia from a civil war. He thought he could be district governor, and at the end of the year he would be a permanent Rotary guest at every event, and didn't have to do much, send in the paperwork. But all of a sudden, here was a district governor with a civil war right in his district. He explained that thousands of people had already been killed. He explained they're doing all that they could to help the refugees that were fleeing the country. And he said, you know, the winter is coming. Is there anything that Rotarians around the world could do to help us? And then he had a PS on the bottom of his letter. He said, Mr. President, if you can't help, I'll understand, but please don't appoint a committee. Well, I decided I wouldn't appoint a committee, and I needed to see the situation firsthand. So I flew to Croatia to see the refugee camps in generally the Zagreb area. When I walked outside the airport in Dras, Austria, and climbed into a plane, Air Croatia, I knew this was going to be a new experience. There was already about 130,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina already moved into the Croatia area. And with the help of the United Nations security units and some security people, we went down along the border of Bosnia and visited refugee camps. It was sad to see people cold, hungry, people that had left their home. It was just what they could carry in their hands. Older people mostly, and little children. Most of the middle-aged people were out fighting each other. They had makeshift communal dining tents, and there was about 32 different refugee camps, each of them having 3,000 or 4,000 people. The weather was getting cold and they needed everything, food and clothes and blankets and medicine. In Zagreb, a newspaper reporter cornered me and he says, "Who are you helping? Are you helping the Muslims or the Serbians or the Bosnians or the Croatians?" I says, "I don't know. When you see a little child that's cold and hungry, you don't ask them their religion or their politics or their national origin. Rotarians help them. We're helping refugees because that's what Rotary does." I immediately put out the word to Rotarians around the world, and supplies began to pour in all over the world. Air Canada provided us with a number of airplanes that took loads and loads of clothing and food and medicine and shipped them all over to Zagreb, Croatia. Rotarians in Germany, they loaded up 10 brand new Mercedes vans to the top as much as they could pack in, and 10 Rotarians drove them all the way from Germany and across Italy and across Austria, across Croatia to the border over near Zagreb. And then they said, you keep the vans. They're yours. You keep them and use to deliver whatever comes into the airport. The Rotarians were there delivering supplies. This little Rotary club in Zagreb, maybe 20 members, at great personal risk in their own lives each day for whatever came into the airport. Over $8 million in 5 weeks came into a bank account. I tried to work with the Rotary Foundation, but they said that doesn't fit within our program. I said, they said they have to wait 3 years. I said, these refugees aren't going to be living in 3 months, let alone 3 years. So we will skip the Rotary Foundation and we will get set up a bank account of our own in Germany or Austria. And when I was there, I said, now, how can I trust you that all this money is going to go in the right place? They said, right after lunch, we'll show you. And they brought in 3 of the steely-eyed bankers that I could have ever seen if they had gone to central casting to get these guys. And these guys said, you can count on us, we will count for, and they counted for every dime that was given to that program. You see, at the end of the year, the United Nations Refugee Program advised me that our efforts in Bosnia had saved the lives, in their estimation, of 100,000 people from starving or freezing to death. Ernst Rang, our district governor, was never a big celebrity, but he's a Rotary hero in my mind for sending a letter just saying, can you help? And Rotarians around the world responded. And other than Polio Plus, Rotary has evaluated that humanitarian program in the Civil War in Bosnia was probably the second greatest humanitarian program of Rotary other than Polio Plus. I think of another story, perhaps about 40 years ago, a guy in New York Rotary Club, Tony Zeno, was sitting reading the Sunday paper, and he read an account of a 9-year-old girl who was horribly mangled by a hyena in Uganda. And Tony was so touched by the tragic plight of Margaret Rose Illico that he initiated an effort to help this child be brought from Uganda to New York to have all the hospital assistance and surgeries that she needed. And this simple act of kindness by one Rotarian initiated a Rotary program called the Rotary Gift of Life. And this simple responses by Rotarians developed this into a dynamic program which has provided the gift of life to over 10,000 children involving worldwide Rotary districts. My friend Tony Zena, he never thought he was a hero, but he was more than a hero to over 10,000 families who was touched by these humanitarian surgeries and hospital stays. About a dozen years ago, I think of another hero. Rotary in England, Tom Henderson had an idea. He said there's all these different calamities happening around the world, and if we just had a box with all the things that people would need ready to ship as soon as a tragedy happened in the world. And so this one box of life-saving materials and equipment, he said, could be prepared in advance and instantly shipped wherever there's floods or earthquakes or tornadoes or tsunamis and other disasters. And thus, from one guy, the idea of the shelter box now provides tents and supplies for 10 persons with cooking equipment and sleeping bags and basic tools and water containers and toys and other essentials. And this program, just started by one Rotarian, has spread around the world in cases like the Japanese tsunamis and Haiti and Chile earthquakes and so many other disasters. Shelter boxes have been the first relief on the ground. The simple idea of a Rotary Club to provide immediate disaster relief is to almost now 1 million people have received shelter boxes in more than 30 nations around the world, just because an idea that Rotarians care. Another outreach of Rotary service, over 2,000 Rotary clubs and districts have donated over 750,000 wheelchairs in 150 countries of the world in cooperation with the Wheelchair Foundation, initiated by a guy who made a lot of money but wanted to give it to good causes. Ken Baring, in 2001, he had this idea. These Rotary clubs have given mobility to children and adults who are victims of polio and birth defects, crippling injuries and accidents and disease. Through these cooperative efforts, over 750,000 people have been given through and the help to thousands of caretakers who took care of them before, are now living a better life because of the unsung work. You saw a need and you began to fill it. In 1978, when Rotary initiated, I talked about this a little bit for the few of you who are there this afternoon, or the few who have missed it this afternoon, really. I talked a little bit about the Health, Hunger, and Humanity program to complete an international project bigger than larger than any clubs or districts can do. As chairman of that committee, I asked the Rotary world, what would you do? What kind of a project would you undertake if you had $1 million? And that first project was the polio immunization in the Philippines. And a Rotarian, Dr. Benny Santos, said we could eradicate polio in the Philippines if we just had the money to buy the vaccine, and we could mobilize all the Rotarians and all the other service groups in the Philippines, and we could do this job in no time at all. And this effort and other successful immunizations led to the Polio Plus campaign to eradicate polio in the world. And that story alone identifies Rotary with one of the world's greatest humanitarian achievements. There was no large vision of anything. It was a few guys that said, we have a job, and Rotarians could do it. When we started that Polio Plus effort in 1987, when we raised the money, we could find polio in 125 nations of the world, and there was over 350,000 cases of polio in the world every year. And now we've come to the point on 25 years that over 99% of all the children of the world have been inoculated with polio vaccine. And probably one of the greatest achievements was the achievement of bringing polio a free nation to the great nation of India. With our partners, the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and UNICEF, we've achieved tremendous achievements in the world. The part of the story this afternoon I didn't get, after we raised $240 million, we went to the World Health Organization and we say, the Rotary Club would like to help eliminate polio in the world. And the World Health Organization said, go on, get out of here. You're a bunch of old guys that go to lunch. We don't need you. We have all the health officials in the world. And we said, well, we have over 1 million volunteers that will help in every part of the world, and we have $240 million in our pocket. They said, come on in. We became a partner with the World Health Organization. Yes, today there are over 500,000 children walking, running, playing as children ought to do because of a few Rotarians that said, let's do something about that horrible disease that takes its toll on children. Oh, we could go on with other amazing achievements. All heroes don't have the opportunity to save children of the world. All heroes don't reach out to refugees in war-torn areas. Many Rotarians are heroes just in their daily lives. Just some random acts of kindness, from taking on a job willingly. So many of you have no idea that you too are heroes. Heroes to someone in your family, in your community, someone that you may never know that your lives have touched, because you and your Rotary Club may have touched the heart, or eased the burden, or given a person a new start. I think it was Ben Franklin who said, I remember Ben talking to me one day, and I think he said, each morning, ask yourself, what good can I do today? And as the day draws to a close, ask, what good have I done today? Heroes are often just common people who light a spark of humanity and love, compassion. And that's what Rotary does. I'll close with a final little story. This is kind of baseball season here, and I remember a story told about. Shay was a mentally and physically disabled youngster. He couldn't learn or understand as other children, but one day at a special school meeting, Shay's father stood up and he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, Shay and I were walking by the ballpark when some boys were playing softball out there, and Shay asked, Dad, do you think they'd let me play ball? Well, he said, I was a dutiful father, and I called to one of the boys and say, is there any chance Shay could come and play ball? Well, the boy looked around and said, well, we're losing by 6 runs already, and it's the 8th inning. I guess he could come and be on our team here. He could bat maybe in the 9th inning. Oh, Shay was so excited. He struggled over the team's bench and with a broad smile saw a t-shirt there, and he put the t-shirt on. And the father walked over with a tear in his eye, and the boys saw the joy that Shay and his father had in just being accepted to be on the team. The bottom of the 8th inning was there, and Shay's team scored a couple runs, but they were still 3 runs behind. Finally, at the top of the 9th, Shay put on a glove and went out at the right field. Even though no hits came his way, he felt he was playing softball. He obviously was ecstatic just to be on the field. In the top of the 9th, Shay's team scored again. Now there were 2 outs, and the bases were loaded, and the potential winning run was on base, and Shay was scheduled to bat. Surprisingly, Shay was given the bat. Everybody knew that a hit was all that was impossible, since Shay really didn't know which end of the bat to hold. However, Shay stepped up to the plate. The pitcher, recognizing that the other team was putting aside winning for the one moment that might make a difference in Shay's life. So the pitcher moved up a couple steps and lobbed the ball to Shay. Shay swung awkwardly and missed. The pitcher took a couple more steps forward, tossed the ball softly to Shea. Shea swung and surprisingly hit the slow grounder back to the pitcher. Well, the game could be over now, but the pitcher picked up the soft grounder and easily could have put Shea out at first. Instead, the pitcher threw the ball way over the first baseman's head, out of the reach of his teammates, and everybody from both teams started yelling, "Shea, Shea, all the way, go, go, run to first." Never in his life had Shea run that far, but he finally made it to first, and everybody called, run to second, Shea, next to base." Well, Shea clumsily ran around towards second. The right fielder now had the ball, and both teams were yelling, and he began to say he could be the hero just throwing him out at second. But he saw what was happening. So he too intentionally threw the ball high over the head of the third baseman, and Shea ran towards second, and then everybody say, Shea, go to third. Well, Shea turned around and, he got to third because somebody turned him around in the right direction. Shea reached third base, and as Shea rounded third, the boys from both teams were now spectators. We're screaming, "Shea, run home, Shea." And Shea ran home and stepped on the plate and was cheered as the hero who hit the grand slam and won the game for the team. That day, the father softly said, with tears running down his cheeks, the boys from both teams helped bring a piece of love and humanity into the world, into a young boy's life. Shea didn't make it till the next summer. He died a few months later, but never having forgotten the moment of seeing his mother tearfully embrace her little hero of the day. And I've often thought, was it really Shea who was the hero? Or could it have been the boys on both teams that were the heroes for a young boy? As these stories have illustrated, heroes can be both, the givers and the takers. Heroes don't exist in a vacuum. Ordinary people become heroes because they have touched the lives of others, and the world becomes a better place. As I look around this room, I just see so many heroes, each in your own club. There's so many Rotary heroes around the world. They're the ones that make a difference. They make a difference in this organization called Rotary. I know that some of you may have gone and put drops of polio vaccine in the tongue of a small child someplace in the world. Some of you may have delivered wheelchairs and lifted a person from the ground who crawled on the ground and put them in a wheelchair and give them mobility. You may have delivered food to the hungry or water to the thirsty. You do random acts of kindness every day. You reach out and, surprisingly, other people have a better life. Those are the real heroes. Rotary is the work of heroes, and that's the work of Rotary. Now that I've come to the autumn years of life, well, I should say I'm in the midwinter years of life. I have concluded the most regretful words you could ever hear would be, I could have helped, but I didn't. You see, the heroes of Rotary are the men and the women who have seen and accepted the challenge to help others. It can be a whole Rotary club that are the heroes, or it can be individuals like Shea or the teams that let Shea make the winning run. That's why it's easy for Rotarians to be heroes. The heroes of Rotary are those men and women who have seen and accepted the challenge to help other people, and then they did. That's why Rotarians have so many heroes, because we can do it without being celebrities. God bless you all.